Welcome back. Veronika Pillay will represent South Africa at the 46th Mrs. Universe beauty pageant in the Philippines in October. Pillay, who was crowned Mrs. Universe South Africa last month, is a constitutional and human rights lawyer specializing in gender equality and domestic violence. She joins us now to tell us more about her Mrs. Universe South Africa achievement and what her plans are ahead of the Mrs. Universe pageant in October. Veronika, congratulations and thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, you were crowned a month ago. Mrs. Universe South Africa is a platform that embraces women from all walks of life, of different ages, married, unmarried, divorced, widowed. What do you think was about you that made you stand out from the other contestants?
Good evening, and thank you for having me today. I believe that as a survivor, firstly, of domestic violence, and as a legal professional working on a day-to-day basis with issues of domestic violence and abuse, I have first-hand knowledge about what goes on in the domestic violence environment with victims and survivors, and how it affects the lives of victims. So this issue of domestic violence is something that is so close to my heart, and it is a passion of mine working in this field. So I believe that when you enter into a pageant like this, the passion that you have needs to go beyond the pageant itself. It needs to be you wanting to make an actual positive change in the lives of individuals. And that is what I do every day. And I believe that that is something that they've seen in me.
So why did you choose to use the platform of pageantry to further lend your voice to the societal ill?
I think the pageantry industry is very underestimated. It's an absolute iconic platform that has such a vast degree of influence in communities and in society at large. I mean, we look at beauty pageants and we're in awe of these people. And because of that degree of influence that it has, I believe that it can be used as a powerful tool to change societal perceptions and to get women to basically, or people who are affected by domestic violence, to break the cycle of abuse. So we can use this platform as well to change societal perceptions on domestic violence.
I mean, you are a lawyer and obviously specialize in constitutional and human rights and other fields, especially when it comes to GBV. What do you believe is the biggest contributor of GBV in our country?
I believe it's people not being educated on what their expectations are. And I think it's each person needs to have a you need to have this heart for, I want to be the change that I want to see in society. And the biggest contributor, I believe, is us not standing together and banding together and saying this is a social ill that is plaguing our society, and it's something that we together as a community are going to say no. We're going to say no to domestic violence. We're going to say no to abuse. And I believe if we stand together and we join hands, because all it takes is one voice at the right pitch to cause an avalanche. And I think if we do that, we're going to be able to change our society.
And in addition to that standing together, what other factors do you believe we need to incorporate within our society to give women back that power?
In working in the field, I've noticed that, and, interacting with the justice system, I believe that we need to get a more sort of proactive reformation in our justice system. Because as it stands, what is happening is we are saying to victims, when they come in to get a protection order, we are saying, we're granting you the protection order. We believe you. We're going to give you the protection order. But go back, be abused, and then we're going to take action against the perpetrator. So I believe that we need to have some kind of reform process at high levels in our justice system, in our governments, where at the point when the protection orders are granted, then victims can have some sort of sense of validation, in a sense that maybe even if we want to introduce something like a minimum sentence, Because look, when the protection orders are granted, we sometimes see that these offenders go back, have relationships with other people, interact with in other domestic relationships, and have become repeat offenders. So what then is the deterrent? And what is going to send a stronger message? I believe that a more stronger message needs to be sent out.
Now, in addition to all of this work, you're also a businesswoman, and you also lend your voice in ensuring that women move within the entrepreneurship space, especially when it comes to the fashion industry. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So I believe that you need to have, in our current economic state in our country, you need to have multiple streams of income. And I think from the perspective of a domestic violence survivor, a lot of people feel like, I can't get out of a relationship, and I've seen this because I am financially indebted to my spouse. So I think starting, small businesses and starting to grow and become entrepreneurs, I mean, each one of us have a skill, and there's something that we can do. We need to find that skill and hone on that and try to get some kind of an income. So for me, with my business partner, starting Showstopper SA, which is an online clothing store, it was something that happened during COVID when, we were not particularly sure about what the stability of the economy of the country was going to be. And we started to think out of the box. And I have a love for fashion. I have a love for beauty. And that is basically what prompted this idea. It took a lot of hard work. It took investing a lot of time. But now it's up and running, and it's been the most blessed experience. So I believe that if I can do it, any woman out there can do something similar to this.
Most certainly. That's absolutely amazing. The first week of October, we will be seeing you on the global stage of Mrs. Universe. Should you win that pageant, what would be your global voice, especially in relation to GBV and domestic violence?
It's definitely going to be advocating for all countries around the world to have domestic violence legislation, because we see, when we look at the stats for domestic violence and GBV, we find that in countries where there is legislation, that the death rate is lower, the stats sometimes get lower, and we see that there is some sort of positive impact when there is legislation. So for me, it will be geared around bringing about legislative reform, and also throwing out this idea that I've just mentioned earlier about having a stricter sort of validation for victims, where they can, trust in the justice system and know that they are going to be protected and their voice is going to be heard. And also to shout from the rooftops, basically, let's break the cycle of abuse. Let's break the silence. And let's try to hold hands with victims and survivors and walk them through this journey so that they can get onto the other side of this and become victors.
Veronika, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we do wish you all the best for the Philippines of the 2023 edition of Mrs. Universe. You certainly have made South Africa proud so far, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. That was 2023 Mrs. Universe South Africa, Veronika Pillay.
I'm from outer space, I got Milky Way for blood, evolution in my veins.